living La Vida low carb. This show is changing lives. We talking about your diet, trying to get you feeling right. Cut up them avocados, fry some eggs. Time to explore the longest running health podcast, hosted by Jimmy Moore. Time to give up the crappy garbage. We're getting into ketosis. Every day is a new step to your goal. Yeah, you're getting closer, motivated and focused. Don't stop, just go. Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
So guys, today we have Dr. Ben Pope. He is here with us here today. He was actually recommended by another Ben who's been on this show recently, who's been on the show to tell us about Ben. Now, a lot of Bens there going on, but yes, Ben Pope is a researcher into diabetes. And I was just talking to him before we came on the air. I am fascinated by mechanisms about how things work. And so he's looking at the mechanism of diabetes, you guys. And I think, man, what a perfect opportunity with like a lot of the things I talk about in my work. It's about saying, well, this works, but you don't always know all the nuances of why it works. So Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Glad to be with you, and hello, everyone.
Yeah, man. So what lab do you work in? You're in a research lab. Where?
I am the Chief Scientific Officer of a company called Mellicell, Inc. We're located here in just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and we study fat cells.
Nice. And so, yeah, that's a deep subject on like insulin resistance.
Absolutely.
With obviously really all chronic diseases kind of start there, and of course obesity. So that's amazing. How long have you been there?
Yeah, so we just started the company just over a year ago. My background prior to that, I spent about 5 years as a postdoc at Harvard, really in a bioengineering lab. So not directly studying diabetes per se, but really sort of fulfilling this vision I have of developing a system of metabolic organs outside the body that we can use to study mechanism, just like you said. And then, yeah, go ahead.
So Chief Science Officer, what's the name of the company again?
Mellicell. So the name comes from diabetes mellitus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
When you have a nerdy name and you have to kind of explain it, it's cute, but you have to kind of explain it to get people to go, oh, okay. Oh.
Well,
but
I'm happy with it for now, at least.
Yeah. No, it's
I'll make you a believer eventually. By the time we're done.
Explain it a little bit, and I guess if I saw it, I'd be like, oh, that looks like diabetes mellitus. Oh, it is. Okay, so what do you sell, and what's the product or the service?
Yeah, so we're a biotechnology company. Our long-term goal is to cure diabetes. This is something that I've been passionate about since my childhood, when both my parents were diagnosed.
Yeah.
And we're really at the very early stages. So in terms of like a product, we have this platform where we can really enhance the value of experiments that are conducted on these tissues outside the body, right? Specifically adipose tissue. And so, we've been able to partner with a couple of pharmaceutical companies to sort of assist them. And our long-term goal is to develop our own drug programs.
Okay. Interesting. So you're kind of using the lab right now to do some research that will maybe develop into something. Okay, that's cool.
Absolutely.
That's cool. So tell us a little more about you. You did briefly say you were at Harvard. Tell us how you kind of got interested and got all nerdy in the science world to want to start investigating fat cells.
Yeah, so I mentioned my parents. So this is something when I was 14, really just interested in diabetes. And I'll admit I had no idea what I was doing as, a young guy, just picking a major in college and sort of, I didn't have family members who were scientists or who discovered cures for things. So it was something I just sort of figured out as I was going along. But I pursued a degree in genetics and biotechnology, figured out I needed to go get a PhD, so got a PhD in cell and molecular biology, and then did this postdoc. And like I said, the idea was, hey, there's so many different suggestive experiments that implicate so many different things for diabetes. I mean, it's crazy,
Right.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. Keep going.
Well, yes. So basically the idea is, hey, if we can have a system where we can really control all of the inputs and measure things really specifically between organs and within organs, we can really sort of figure out and test some of these hypotheses that are coming in from all different angles.
So is your work looking specifically at the pancreas, since it plays such an integral role in, I guess, the insulin, which would affect diabetes, or is it a total approach of multiple organs?
So right now the focus, I mean, that's like a huge goal, and the focus right now is actually just one small piece of it, and that's the contribution of fat, specifically the contribution of enlarged fat, right? So if we think about what happens when we gain weight, our fat cells get bigger, right? Like,
yes,
a lot larger. When we lose weight, our fat cells get smaller. Yeah,
I've heard.
yeah. So and that's something that people just can't really study using the existing tools prior to the technology that we developed, because the fat cells just don't get big at all when you try to grow them in a petri dish with conventional methods.
So I'm going to pick your brain like crazy today. I know you don't mind. So I have talked to other people on this show, and one of them said, if you're still have the ability to pack on fat cells, especially in your midsection, that is your body preventing you from developing some kind of a disease like type 2 diabetes. Because people see fat on the body and they just go, oh my gosh, it's grotesque and I'm getting unhealthier. But as long as your body is still putting on adipose tissue, is that a sign that your body's keeping you from calamity in your health, and that the moment that stops is when the tables turn and chronic disease can start to really set in?
Yeah, so very interesting point. So there's a couple things in there, and so absolutely fat plays a critical role, right? And the ability for your fat to expand and accommodate the energy storage, based on your diet, that's vital even, right? So organisms where they have genetic defects where they can't develop fat, they die. And then, like, in terms of the benefits of that, right? You think about a drug like rosiglitazone that's used. It's a diabetes drug that improves insulin sensitivity. Well, it's also known that helps create more fat cells. People that take it. So it's sort of exactly like you're saying, and what one of your previous guests said. The ability to produce more fat so that it can expand and accommodate the energy demands is important and healthy and a good thing.
So guys, those of you that are gaining weight, just take solace that if you stopped and yet you were still doing unhealthy behaviors like diet, that you're just a sitting duck at that point to developing type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and all the rest of the different chronic diseases out there. It's not that fat gain is a good thing, but it's a stopgap in the meantime of preventing you from developing these more serious diseases.
Yeah, it's a natural thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and yet culture tells us it's highly unnatural and you must get it off at all costs, no matter what you do. And even the conventional wisdom when it comes to diabetes isn't change your diet. Well, it is lip service. Watch your diet, exercise, but they don't really give prescriptiveness to it. It's lose weight, and by losing weight, you will help your diabetes. Can you talk about why they say that and why it may or may not be right?
Yeah, so there's certainly some evidence about, hey, people who can lose weight, 5-10% of their body weight, they see improvements in insulin sensitivity, right? And that's, like you said, that translates directly into the underlying cause of diabetes type 2. So why that may or may not be right, I mean, that's an interesting question. So if you, I guess the reason I'd say it may not be right is if you look at the long-term impacts of that type of prescription or health regimen, it doesn't work in terms of presenting or preventing or reversing diabetes,
It's
right?
not sustainable either. Like
Right.
you lose 5%, let's say you're 400 pounds and you lose 5% of your weight. 20 pounds ish ain't going to do much for you unless you continue that trend over a period of time.
Yep. Yeah. So if you look at studies where they're prescribing even like intensive counseling, right? Like people following you, helping you sort of commit to these types of lifestyle changes. You do see some early effectiveness in terms of weight loss, but it plateaus pretty quickly, and that sort of initial metabolic benefit you have, it sort of goes away in the long term.
Yeah, I think we put so much emphasis on weight loss being the answer, and we totally miss the endocrine system. I think if we don't pay pay attention to the role insulin and leptin and ghrelin and all these different hormones play in to this discussion, you're never going to get anywhere. And I think that's why we really haven't seen a lot of progress when it comes to diabetes, because we've come up with the wrong modality. There was a theory thrown out there, and it's just been run with in various labs and research over the years. There's starting to be more research on the insulin hypothesis, but not enough. And so what do you see as kind of the core reason why diabetes exists?
Yeah, so I mean, it was a number of years ago where you start to see this huge spike in the prevalence of type 2 diabetes. You've talked about this on previous talks about how that basically tracked very closely with public policy on nutrition.
Yes, 1980.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that's absolutely playing a huge role. There was still diabetes before that, though, right? So the earliest recorded observations that diabetes exists dates back to like the ancient Egyptians, right? So it's been around a long time. That had nothing to do with Ansel Keys or whatever. But
Right.
but yeah, so there's also a genetic genetic causes that lead to diabetes, and I can get into that if that's something you want to talk about now. Or
I'm more interested in why in 1980 did we see these twin true pandemics of obesity and type 2 diabetes skyrocket, and then heart disease came after that. Now it's the number one killer. And see, you can't talk about diabetes and obesity without talking about heart disease, because I contend they're all the same disease of insulin resistance.
yeah, absolutely, right. So diabetes is really just diagnosed based on your blood glucose levels, right? And that's it. And so what ends up killing people are the long-term consequences, like you say, the heart disease and other cardiovascular issues, stroke and so on, embolism. So I've seen this obviously with my parents. They've each had all of those things that have happened, right? So but in terms of like what's happening over this time period, yeah, I mean it's public policy around nutrition and diet, right? So the inclusion of high fructose corn syrup in
Yes.
a ton of different products, and public policy to promote agriculture in the U.S. and big sugar and so on, right? So
Yeah, got a lot of forces at play here. And
yeah.
the HFCS, high fructose corn syrup, came around about the year I was born. 1971 was when, I think it was 72 when they switched over from using sugar to HFCS, because the corn lobby got them to put it into public policy, like you said. And it seems to me that, and I don't want to get political here, but it seems to me that once the government got their hands on a lot of these industries that affected the food supply is when diabetes went crazy. And then everybody went, oh my gosh, why do we have a diabetes and obesity epidemic? what's going on? And it's not hard to see.
Real Good Foods is one of the fastest growing frozen food companies in the U.S. Everything they make is nutrient dense, high in protein, low in carbs, and made from real food ingredients. Instead of using processed flours, everything they make is 100% grain-free and gluten-free, which is how they keep their carbs so low. They can be found at Costco, Walmart, Target, Kroger, and in almost every grocery store nationwide. Or you can order online. Check us out today at realgoodfoods.com and at Real Good Foods on social media.
No, absolutely not. Right. So there's definitely changes that need to be made there. And I think they're starting to be, like you said, they're starting to be more, there's historical evidence that predates, the stuff that's going on now. Right. But there's starting to be more attention paid to it.
Well, and especially with the devastation of the comorbidities during the pandemic over the past year and a half, it's all related to blood sugar control and insulin levels and obesity and on down the line of everything related to type 2 diabetes, which is your primary research focus. And it seems to me that if the past year and a half did nothing else, maybe it woke a few people up that, metabolic health may matter after all.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was already affecting, 10% of the world's adult population, right? So
Yeah.
It was already a pandemic before COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, and the ironic thing is more people die of heart disease, more people die of complications from type 2 diabetes, obesity than this pandemic, and which is kind of like been disheartening for me as a health podcaster trying to communicate, hey, look, if we're going to give all that attention to that, these things have been around and they're still around and they're still causing people to die, get sick, live a less quality of life. And so let's get into it, because I really want to get my hands dirty on this, and you're the perfect person to do this with. Make the connection between fat cells and diabetes, because a lot of people say, well, I don't eat sugar, so I'm good. And that may or may not be a good strategy. It's probably it's better. It's like filtered cigarettes instead of unfiltered cigarettes. But
Yeah.
fat cells play such an integral role in this disease.
Yeah, absolutely. This is frankly a very easy case to make. Okay, and so it's the basis of what we're doing with the company. And so if we just start and look at the prevalence of or the existence of drugs that exist for diabetes and for weight loss, there's actually no drugs on the market that target fat cells for weight loss, right? Even though our fat cells is where all of our excess weight is stored, when we gain weight, and it also secretes hormones that regulate our appetite. So
yes.
So leptin, you mentioned this earlier. This is produced exclusively in fat cells. This is something that tells us, that's supposed to tell us that, we're full after we've eaten and decrease our appetite, right? So, the other sort of major hormone that's coming from adipose tissue is adiponectin, right? And so adiponectin is, again, exclusively produced by fat, and it's something that increases the effect of insulin within fat and with other tissues in our body to take up glucose after meals. So both of those things are produced exclusively in fat, and it turns out the two things that change the most in terms of markers in our blood that can predict diabetes years before we develop diabetes, it's those two things, right? So leptin ends up being elevated and adiponectin is decreased. And that's, like I said, predictive of diabetes years before you would see the actual symptoms in terms of blood glucose, and they're produced exclusively in fat.
And carbohydrate drives a lot of that in the diet, but I want to focus in, because that one's easy for me to say because I'm a low carb guy. But I want to look at the role that seed oils, vegetable oils play in diabetes. Is there any connection that you've seen?
Yeah, so I mean, that's an interesting question. As I talked about my background, I'm very interested in nutrition, and probably going to start to do an experiment with the keto diet myself, frankly. But yeah, like my background, yeah,
When you're ready.
yes, okay, but my background is not really in I don't have a ton of experience and expertise in diet per se, so I don't want to speculate about that, if that's all right.
Well, and that's okay. Yeah, if it's
Yeah.
out of your expertise, I would say if you're looking at diabetes and fat cells and you don't know about ketogenesis, you should know about ketogenesis, because I think it's intricately tied. And I'm not telling you anything new. You know Ben Bikman.
Yeah.
So you're aware that it's out there and you're aware of it. But I would say, as you continue to do your research at your company here, look at the mechanisms and look at the mechanisms that a ketogenic diet helps with. And maybe, I know this isn't going to be great for your bottom line, but maybe you don't need a pharmaceutical solution, or at least the kind of one that you'll be developing, because it'll only be mimicking the effects of what a ketogenic diet could do for people. And it's not a hard diet to implement.
Yeah, so I just meant specifically the consequences of eating seed oils, like you asked. But yeah. And I mean, frankly, my goal, for a business to be successful, obviously you have to make money, but the whole point of this is to get rid of diabetes and have people be healthy. And so our goal is not to sort of remove the need for people to be responsible with what they choose to eat and things like that, right? So that's not the point. So yeah, let's be healthy, and our job is to help people do that in whatever way we can. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because a lot of my listeners at the very beginning would go, dude, he's trying to peddle the drug. I'm like, no, it's an option on the table. And I think we need all tools in the toolbox.
Absolutely.
Because if we're going to truly reverse diabetes, I think here's your business plan. And I'm just spitballing it with you here. We're just buds talking
I appreciate it. Yeah.
On here. For me, there needs to be a prescriptive way to get to the reversal of the type 2 diabetes. And so a lot of us have caught on to it through nutrition, but there's other kind of nutrients and supplements and other protocols that can impact your blood sugar and insulin levels that would help heal that, would bring the A1C down. And so I wonder if you guys at your lab develop some kind of a protocol, maybe not necessarily a drug for everybody, but keep that as an option for some people. But that would be the thing that you sell is, hey, look, we will reverse your type 2 diabetes. Come see us and we'll customize a plan for you. Now, it'll be a basic plan for everybody. Some people will need a little more intensive because their A1C is 14. And then someone else has an A1C of 6.5. Okay, you don't have to go as intensive because you can reverse it quickly. But it would be a prescriptiveness with diet, exercise, sauna therapy, HIIT training, and targeted to them. Maybe you run some blood work. Like, I'm envisioning kind of this lab that even doctors could say, all right, I don't know what to do with this patient anymore here. And you guys would be the ones that would fix them.
Yes, I mean, those are really interesting ideas. So, I mean, I don't know how we would go about testing sauna therapy with some of our tools, but
I mean, there's all kinds of biohacks. Like, there's so many ways. I wear this little ring that lets me track my sleep. Like, there's so many things that are available now that have never been available to consumers. And so if they're available to consumers, they're definitely available to you guys in a lab setting. I don't know. It seems to me people are lost because the ADA, American Diabetes Association, has failed them. Their local doctor has failed them. The so-called diabetes educators, the dietitians, have all failed them. And so they're looking for some kind of a hope. And the Hope Diabetes Clinic sounds pretty awesome to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, you asked at the very beginning what our product is. And at this stage, in any biotechnology company at the early stage, their product is information. And
Yeah.
so you're absolutely right. And that's going to be our first product is, hey, what exactly is happening that's wrong at a molecular level? And what are ways that we can fix that, be it through diet, a drug for people who maybe have a genetic predisposition to that particular issue or whatnot. So yeah, exactly. The most important thing is to figure out what's happening and develop solutions to fix it. Yeah.
I think part of the shift that happened in 1980 wasn't just nutrition. I was a kid in the 80s,
Yeah.
and I remember video games came out,
Mm-hmm.
and we stayed inside. We weren't outside playing as much. We were playing the video games. We weren't exposed to sun as much. There were a lot of things that were suddenly different in American culture that I think contributed to this as well. So I think having kind of a totality of, all right, let's go back in time 100 years ago. How did those people who were pretty basically free from type 2 diabetes and obesity a decade ago, 1920s, 30s, 40s, what were they doing? And now let's look and mimic what they were doing in a modern kind of society. I know we've got a lot of things that are different. Definitely the processed foods are way different now than they were then, but we could really kind of replicate what's old is new again to get back to pre-1980 diabetes levels.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess you've got a little bit of an advantage. So I was born in '84. So my personal experience isn't there, but
your experience is similar in as much as by the time you came of age as a kid, video games, TV, kids today have devices, they have Netflix, they've got Spotify. I mean, they're doing all these things inside, and they're not learning some of the old-fashioned, like getting dirty, all those microbes that they would have playing in the dirt and eating dirt. Like it matters.
Yeah, it matters. So absolutely, and you brought up microbes and the immune system and things like that, and that plays out with things like type 1 diabetes and other autoimmune disorders that are on the rise in that same time period, like you said. So I've actually got 4 kids, so we go outside and do outdoorsy stuff frequently as well, but yeah, I mean, you're right. I didn't have an iPad or a phone to play games on or whatever. I did have the Nintendo and things, but yeah, I mean, that's on the rise, and we have to sort of consciously counteract it.
Dude, the year you were born, I got an Atari. Look, we got to play Pong, and we thought it was the coolest thing ever. So.
Yeah, so I was, duck hunt and things like that. But.
Yes, duck hunt. Yeah. And then the dog would laugh at you.
Oh, I'm remembering it now that you say it. Yeah.
That's that ketosis brain, man. It never forgets anything. So.
Okay.
Well, let's get into a subject that I think will be very interesting to my audience related to the subject of diabetes. Yeah. Insulin resistance, which I've already mentioned, but insulin sensitivity, and that's the goal that so many of us are seeking. How do you find that line between insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity? Where does that begin?
So, what do you mean exactly by that? Yeah.
Like when people are trying to heal their body from a high A1C and they're trying to become not diabetic, in other words, curing their type 2 diabetes, it's not going to happen until they go from insulin resistant, which is what type 2 diabetes is in its worst, to insulin sensitive. So when do they know that they've reached insulin sensitivity? Are there specific markers they look at? Is it a certain way they feel? Are there definitely physical or mental kind of manifestations of that?
Yeah, so I mean, your doctors are going to be looking at decreased HbA1c and but so that's going to be of course your average blood glucose levels, a measure of that. And that's really what, the original definition of insulin resistance was. This is before the insulin receptor was discovered or any insulin signaling was known. It was just, hey, your blood glucose levels stay high after a meal.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're sort of asking about, but I guess I'm taking some liberties here with the answer. But yeah, so I mean, inflammation is what you see, with all these different hypotheses about what's causing diabetes. The one common thing that, sort of I noticed as I was, studying this and looking into it as I was, sort of planning out, the vision of what my research I wanted it to be, was like you always see inflammation or some immune component, and this extends across the spectrum of different types of diabetes, whether it's type 1, type 2, Alzheimer's is sort of getting sort of brought in here, and so I mean, and then conversely, even if you don't have diabetes, any sort of inflammation will also result in insulin resistance. So it's so that seems to be the key that you need to sort of focus on about eliminating, and how to go about doing that. I mean, so I know you've had success and people have had success with diet. Diet also seems, I see you're about to say something, so I just have to stop and hear it. Yeah.
When it comes to inflammation, and I agree with you, I think all chronic disease goes back to inflammation, even before insulin. I mean, insulin is a huge part, but it's the chicken or the egg. Was the insulin going up that raised the inflammation, or was it the inflammation that went up that raised the insulin? They both kind of run parallel. When one goes up, the other goes up. When one goes down, the other goes down. So I agree with you. Yeah, I think there are a lot of things you can do to lower inflammation. Obviously, diet is a powerful one, but some of those biohacks I was talking about earlier, just sun exposure, red light therapy, cold thermogenesis. We could go down the line, sauna therapy, all the things that can help with inflammation levels, and it's very easily detectable. HSCRP, IGF-1, homocysteine. I mean, we can go down the list of all the ways to track that. But see, the average consumer has no clue what those things are. They hear inflammation, they go, well, I didn't stub my toe and I don't have a red toe now. And it's like they don't really know what it means chronically to have inflammation. So it's kind of a harder sell. And then insulin kind of is tied to, well, I don't have type 2 diabetes, so I don't have to worry about that. Educating the public on what these terms mean and why they're applicable to everyone is probably a key of your company.
Keto Chow is a customizable shake mix that is also perfect for cooking and baking, giving you simple, nutritionally perfect meal options. Keto Chow. Make keto easy. Discover your favorite flavor at jimmylovesketochow.com.
Yeah, so I mean, it's frankly, just to sort of answer your last question and comment about, what our company's trying to do, right? So, I mean, there's a lot we don't know about, what's causing what and why and how. But, like I said, it's clear that, some weight loss is helpful for improving insulin resistance. And so what we're doing is really twofold. One is we've got this technology that allows us to grow fat cells to the sizes we have in our bodies, right? And we can watch weight gain, a model of weight gain, and we can induce weight loss just by watching these cells get bigger and smaller, right? And
you do it in animal-based models. How do you replicate that?
So these are with human cells in our system. Okay. And so you're talking about how do you sort of do the same thing in animals?
Under a microscope, is that what you're doing?
Yeah, exactly. So we can grow them in a petri dish, right?
Yeah.
And so this is really the first step in drug development, right? So you want to work with some technologies that are relatively reproducible, reflective of the in vivo environment inside us, but also something that's really easy to use, easy to scale, and and inexpensive. So animals are not those things, right? So
No.
yeah. So this is, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, are you using like what, stem cells? How are you doing this in the petri dish?
Yeah, exactly. So we use adult stem cells that you can isolate either from people undergoing liposuction or other types of surgeries where that they elect that a sample can be taken and used for research.
Okay. So what have you seen preliminarily so far? Any kind of insights as to why fat cells are so directly tied to diabetes, or is it too early?
Well, yeah. So, so far what we've done is we've created this technology that allows us to recapitulate what's happening in the body. And so we've shown that, hey, when we compare our fat cells that we can make versus the conventional method to real fat from human beings, hey, genetically, in terms of the levels of the expression and activity of different genes, ours is much more closer to the real human fat than what was previously been able to grow. In terms of the connection to diabetes, yeah, I mean we're really early in this process, and that's sort of what we're getting into. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry, you just got my brain going a million miles. One of the common notions is this idea of a set point, like your body wants to be at some set point. I've fought it my whole life, this whole set point, that no matter what you do, it's fighting you tooth and nail to keep the fat cells you have right where you are. And then it takes caloric restriction, it takes exerting exercise, all these kind of big measures to really move the needle, and then kind of consistency beyond that to kind of keep that going. But at some point, your body's trying to get back to some level of homeostasis. And so that set point thing becomes a bitch for so many of us trying to do that. So are you going to try to see why that's happening in your work as well?
Yeah, so you have to sort of work to your advantages, right? So like with our system, we've got a great screening platform for compounds, maybe nutraceuticals, whatever, but things that when the cell sees this signal, it can shrink either by releasing things through lipolysis or through a browning mechanism, right? And so in lipolysis, what I mean by that is there's enzymes that the cell produces that can take the stored fat. 90% of the cell is just a big droplet of fat, and it can break those down to release them into the blood. In a browning mechanism, what I mean is, the cell can start burning that as essentially heat, right? Because there's specific types of cells, fat cells in the body called brown fat cells, and that's their main function, to produce heat to regulate our body temperature.
Yes.
So those are the types of things we can easily use our platform to identify.
Well, and white fat, brown fat kind of discussion is kind of a hot topic these days. So can you give the simple explanation of why white fat can be harmful, what it is, versus that brown fat that's used to heat us?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not necessarily harmful, I'd say, like we talked about. That's, we need both of these cell types, yeah.
But it can be if it gets around the organs in voluminous amounts. I suppose that's the argument of you don't want too much of it to get around the precious organs, because then it starts to squeeze them and it just creates problems you don't want.
Yeah, well, I mean, it probably, I haven't heard this sort of, you're essentially describing like a mechanical argument where it's sort of getting squeezed or something.
Yeah.
I see it more as a signaling issue, right? So, communication between different types of cells and the proximity sort of lends itself to either absorb signals that are meant for other things or just sort of directly communicate in proximity. But all these studies, yeah, I mean, exactly like you said, there's correlations is what they are, where they see, hey, people with more fat around their internal organs, their visceral organs or visceral fat, when that's really high, as opposed to the stuff that's under our skin distributed throughout the rest of our body, that seems to be more predictive of disease, but it's a correlation, right? So in terms of like why and how, that's not worked out just yet.
Is there really hope for reversing type 2 diabetes? Because when I first got into blogging and podcasting, they were like, Jimmy, you can't say you can reverse type 2 diabetes. And I was like, but what about all the people that replicate again and again and again and again, doing some prescriptiveness, and their A1C goes below 5? Like, what am I supposed to do with that when they were diagnosed type 2 diabetic and then they bring it down? Now, mind you, they have to keep doing those things that got them there to continue not being a diabetic, because I think kind of once you have that propensity for type 2 diabetes, if you go back to your old way, you're going to become type 2 diabetic again. But from a pathological perspective, looking at the blood work, you're no longer a type 2 diabetes. And I've seen it again and again, at least in my world, with ketogenic diets has really helped. But from your perspective, do you guys think you could actually reverse it so that it doesn't come back unless they change their lifestyle?
Yeah, so I don't know if this will be helpful as an answer, but I feel like some of the questions are sort of needling in at this.
Look, there's vagueness to my questions by design. I want you to answer how you want to answer.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I also want to answer your question and the question that I'm sure lots of people have too. So
I'll get more pointed if you strike a thought.
All right, I appreciate that. Appreciate the leeway. So, like I said, I sort of did this, had this experience, went through this time where I was trying to like figure out what is, of all these different ideas about what's causing it, what's the sort of one thing that I should focus on that I think is the most likely to be the silver bullet that's going to fix everything and, or at least help the most people. And I really had a paradigm shift about this, just in the last 2 years, where, I realized, there's a lot of things that are contributing to it, genuinely. And there's a lot of things that can contribute to improving the condition as well. And so, I don't need to sort of find a silver bullet. I just need to find something that can help in some way, and we can be successful, like you said, in terms of like, the bottom line or whatever. And it'll just be a start of the process and contributions to make. But so in terms of the contribution we want to make, that absolutely has been shown will help people with this condition, is inducing some sort of weight loss, right? So 10% or more of body weight, and being able to do this in a sort of safe way without side effects, right? Or without some of the undesirable side effects that you see with existing medications. So
right.
Yeah.
Or with hunger, or with other quality of life issues. I think this is what derails many people from kind of the standard kind of protocol for helping people with type 2 diabetes. Go on a low-fat, high-carb diet, exercise on a treadmill, take this medication and metformin and on down the line, and they do all those things, and they're miserable in the process. And they're going, okay, yeah, Byetta helped me lose a little bit of weight, but I'm still struggling like with hunger, and I'm not really seeing my A1C come down. And now my doctor's talking about maybe I should be taking exogenous sources of insulin, external insulin, to keep my blood sugar under control when I have a carbohydrate-based meal. it seems to me we've convoluted the discussion by making it so complicated with all these protocols that if you simplified the process, which is what I was telling you about with your business model, with what you guys are doing, simplify the process by saying, okay, it's as simple as this, this, and this. And if you do these modalities in conjunction with one another, you can't just do one, you need to do all of them. And if you do them in this order, in this prescriptiveness, you should see a reversal of your type 2 diabetes. And I think that clarity of language, that prescriptiveness, that's what's missing in diabetes care right now. That's why so many doctors are just throwing all this conventional wisdom at patients, and patients are going, I've done that for years and it's done nothing. They need hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I see this with my parents. Yeah. So anyway, I guess I've been beating around the bush a little. Yeah, go ahead.
I got your wheels turning in your head now, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I just mean, yeah. So, yeah, the advice is really shallow, like you say, and superficial, right? Like eat less, and that's it. Or I think it really stems from an idea that's, you know, it's broader than just the healthcare community. It permeates throughout our society about, hey, I mean, if you're overweight, it's your fault, and it's because,
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So,
and if you listen, there's people that develop type 2 diabetes that have never had a donut in their life. And yet people will judge them because, oh, you have diabetes. See, you ate too many donuts. And so this is where work like yours is going to be so key, taking away the judgmentalness, taking away the name and blame game. Genetics do play a role. You did ask earlier if you could expand upon the genetics. Do touch on that now. I think it applies now in the conversation.
Yeah, so you know, we're starting to understand the genetic underpinnings of type 2 diabetes. You know, several studies have been attempted and uncovered, you know, different variants, right? So most of our genetic code is identical from human to human. It's very sort of small, you know, just sort of, I'm trying to sort of translate this. You know, it's not like it's that complicated to understand. It's just, you know, anyway, a lot of people are familiar with 23andMe and other types of genetic tests. And so what they do is they look at these, you know, just a few spots in the genetic code that, you know, we've learned from studying it that, hey, it's these spots where you see a lot of changes.
All right, so get nerdy with some of those SNPs. I want to hear what the nerdy names are for those genetic things that maybe people might know they have.
Yeah, so the most common, and up until, I mean, just like earlier this week, the most predictive SNP in terms of type 2 diabetes risk is a SNP that's located, and there's several of them in this gene, as a matter of fact, but in a gene called TCF7L2. Okay, so so this was discovered, you know, not too long ago, within the last 10, 15 years, and the link to diabetes. And so, you know, a few years ago, my wife got me this great Christmas present, right? So both me and her and my parents and her parents, we all got 23andMe, and at the time they didn't offer, you know, a type 2 diabetes risk score. Now they do, but you know, they give you all the raw data. And so, you know, I collected all the raw data and did my own analysis and found out, hey, you know, sort of my dad has 70% of the SNPs, the risk variants for type 2 diabetes. My mom has another 70%, and I have 80% of them because, you know, I'm their kid. So, and this SNP in TCF7L2, hey, my dad has it. My mom didn't, and I don't either. But anyway, he just died, you know, about a week ago from, you know, complications of diabetes. So and my mom's still living. But yeah, like I said, they were both diagnosed about 20 years ago.
How old was he when he died?
74.
So kind of young. I mean, I suppose the average death age is like 77, so not real young, but like it's devastating when that happens. By the way, I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
And it probably is now going to be a motivational factor to really want to kind of do something about this, because this has directly hit your family. And yes, 23andMe, amazing, guys. If you could do that, there's other companies out there, but they're kind of the big boy out there and very easy to access. I know Dr. Rhonda Patrick has like an interpretation of a lot of that data as well, the raw data. You being a scientist kind of know how to interpret, but if an average person wanted to do that, it's not as easy, and your doctor doesn't know how to read those things either. So.
Yeah. So I'm actually, I've gotten a little sidetracked with the business, but I had started to try to put together an online tool to do this because 23andMe didn't have it. So maybe that'll be coming out soon. But
that could be a part of your plan with the company here for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the work you're doing is amazing. I feel like type 2 diabetes has kind of been along with heart disease, along with obesity, we poured so much money into it. And how much better off are we now? Like, I don't see a return on all that investment in the research and in just like the practicality of what we've taught. And if you do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, that's where we've been with diabetes care. Now, thankfully, from an organizational standpoint, the American Diabetes Association did 3 years ago at least kind of give nutritionally another option besides that typical diabetes diet. The lady that runs that group is low carb. And so she's like, hey, let's add low carb as an option. And so it's there for people. I don't think they promote it near as much as they need to, but it was helpful. But I'm excited to see what comes out of your research and what you find, and then like what you come up with as far as like a business or service with your company. I'm not anti-pharmaceutical if it has a good purpose in mind. And if you can develop some kind of a drug that improves insulin sensitivity along with kind of maybe a ketogenic diet, maybe some other things for those people with the most severe kind of type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. And one more thing, but before I let you go.
Yeah.
I think type 2 diabetes, definitely a great target. Why don't you catch them before they develop it? Why not develop something, and it's going to be pretty much the same modality as what you're doing with type 2 diabetes, except it's before it's fully there. Why don't you catch insulin resistance? Because I think, what was that stat that came out in the study? 88% of Americans have some semblance of the spectrum of insulin resistance. 88%. That is shocking. That's 9 out of 10 people. And like, what are we doing about it? Nothing. And most people, they don't even know what that phrase means. Now, thanks to people like Ben Bikman and others trying to explain it, it's a little better known than it was. But to me, that's the winner chicken dinner business idea, is let's catch them before they develop type 2 diabetes. Obviously, people with type 2 diabetes already are full-blown insulin resistant, but I think you're going to get a lot of clients that way that could come to whatever your business and service is if you could just convince them of the problem of insulin resistance.
Yeah, so I mean, education is important for any company, and educating about how to use your product, but also why, like you say, and why people need it. And so I think, I mean, like people talk about pre-diabetes. I think that's a little bit tricky. I don't think that's the right biomarker, right? So it's strictly glucose is what it is, but
although take into account high triglycerides, if we're talking about metabolic syndrome, high triglycerides, low HDL, high insulin, high inflammation levels, all of those are tied to beyond just glucose.
Yeah, so those things are important. I just mean the diagnostic criteria are usually just glucose, which is a mistake, like you said. Yeah. So So yeah, I mean, we'll be doing things like this, trying to educate. Your audience is already well educated about this, but we can help promote you as we try to educate the world about this as is needed. And yeah, I mean, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So absolutely, and we can help more people that way. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, when Ben Bikman told me about you, I said a friend of Ben Bikman's is a friend of Jimmy Moore's, and so I was really glad to get you on here today. So again, the company Mellicell, Mellicell. Do you have a website?
Yes, we do. Mellicell.com. Yep.
I knew that's what it was, but I I'll call at the end.
Yeah. Some things make sense, actually.
Yeah. Yes. And so again, we've had Ben Pope on here. He is the co-founder of this company, the chief science officer. And Ben, please keep me abreast of what's happening with the company. Anything I can do maybe to consult your company. And I gave you unsolicited advice today, but anything I can do to help you, because I want to reverse type 2 diabetes. I feel like it's possible. And for most people, nutrition is enough. But for a lot of people, it's not enough, and you need other things. And those other things is what I hope your lab comes up with. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for your support. Appreciate it, Jimmy.
Get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com. Woo!
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.